Good day! Now we're at the end of all things. Tapos na ang fourth quarter, tapos na ang school year. So before we say goodbye, let's summarize kung ano yung kwento nung Math 3, kung ano yung kwento nitong school year sa mathematics. In one word, Math 3 was all about functions. And let's go back dun sa conceptual idea ng isang function. Essentially, a function is a rule that maps a particular input to a particular output depende dun sa rule nung mapping, which is the function itself. Siya yung nagko-connect ng input and output natin according sa isang logical na rule. When we talked about geometric transformations, these are actually functions. Na ang input natin ay yung pre-image at yung output ng function natin ay yung image. And if you will recall, we talked about four isometries. The first is the translation, and then we had the rotation. So translations and rotations, sila yung hindi nag-change ng orientation nung pre-image natin papunta sa image. Pero pag nag-flip na yung image natin, then we go into orientation reversing isometries. We have first the mirror reflection, and pag meron tayong mirror reflection na may kasamang translation, we have our glide reflection. Now, after we talked about isometries, nagpunta na tayo dun sa familiar na function na pinaplot natin sa Cartesian plane. And we discussed polynomial and rational functions in great detail. And we spent more than a quarter and a half dito. Kasama dito yung pinag-usapan natin kung ano ang odd at ang even function. Tapos naghanap tayo ng intercepts both nung polynomial function at nung rational function. Define natin kung ano ang increasing, decreasing, and constant in an interval. And when we talked about the behavior of rational functions, we talked about its asymptotes. So these are lines that our graphs of functions approach as they approach a particular value. Pwedeng nag-approach sila ng specific na number like siguro 1, or they could be approaching positive or negative infinity. Kasama sa discussion natin ng polynomial and rational functions ay yung behavior nila, yung end behavior ng mga functions. That is, ano yung ginagawa ng function as it approaches negative infinity and as it approaches positive infinity. Ganun din for rational functions. We use the remainder and factor theorems para pag meron tayong expression na polynomial, kakayanin natin siyang i-factor at alamin kung ilan yung zeros niya. Ginamit natin yung fundamental theorem of algebra para masabi natin na yung power, yung degree ng isang polynomial function, ganun kadaming zeros yung i-expect natin sa polynomial function na yon. Counting multiplicities. Ginamit din natin yung Descartes' rule of sign, rational root theorem, para ma-develop yung technique ng pag-sketch sa ating polynomial and rational functions. So after we spent a considerable amount of time sa dalawang families of functions na to, tumingin din tayo ng other types of functions, starting sa square root function, and we know that the semicircle and the half parabola functions, nanggagaling sila sa paggamit ng isang square root. Then we also talked about piecewise functions and yung ating floor, ceiling na step functions. Then we moved on to a family of functions na kung titignan natin, medyo simple lang. Meron lang siyang isang asymptote, tapos nag-curve lang siya gently. This would be our exponential and logarithmic functions. And it just turned out na meron silang napakadaming applications. So nag-solve din tayo ng mga problems of behavior that follow the exponential or logarithmic functions. And si logarithm, actually, ang dami pa nating mapipiga sa kanya. Natutunan natin na ginagamit pala nila yung logarithms nun para i-transform yung complicated operation of multiplication into addition. And there's a lot of rules that we could apply para mag-play around with logarithmic expressions. And one important thing to note about the exponential and logarithmic functions ay inverse sila ng isa't isa. At ang inverse ng isang function ay yung reflection ng function na yun across the line y equals x. Then after we're done with the continuous functions, we took a look at discrete functions. Ito na imbis na ang domain natin ay set of real numbers, it's just a set of counting numbers. And a better term for them, or a more familiar term for them, are sequences. So we looked at arithmetic sequences, we looked at harmonic sequences, at tinignan din natin kung bakit siya binigyan ng pangalan na harmonic sequence. We looked at geometric sequences, as well as yung mga partial sums or sums to infinity ng mga sequences na to, which we called series. And after that, we took a look at the Pascal's triangle, na ang dami pala nating patterns na makukuha at ultimately, yung pag-expand natin ng binomial ay nanggagaling sa kanya at sa understanding natin ng permutations and combinations. That was a quick run-through of this school year, a year in math that was full of functions. So let us say goodbye to all the little friends that we've met in our lessons. Let's thank Cloud Mendoza for all their little animals na nagamit natin to spice up our graphs and make them kahit paano look more visually interesting. And let's thank Jose Rizal, Andres Bonifacio, Antonio Luna, and si Father Ben Nebres for gracing our slides when we talked about geometric transformations. As well as my first attempts at using animals. Ngayon si Tarsier at si Pilandok. Meron palang mas cute na options. So I moved on to them. So thank you once again and goodbye, our little friends. And that's it. I wish you batch 2024 the best of luck in the coming school year. I hope you take this break as a break. Pahinga muna tayo from academics. If you can find the time, pahinga muna tayo from the screen. Read a lot of books. Spend a lot of time with our friends and family. And make the most of our time habang hinihintay natin maging available yung vaccine for adolescents. We need all the rest we can get before we start our next year in grade 10 and batch 2024 padayon. Thank you very much for this opportunity to teach you mathematics, and I hope you learned a lot. And I look forward to seeing you in person bago kayo graduate. Goodbye and thank you, batch 2024.